This is Sala Sutta, Samyutta Nikaya 36.6. Because an uninstructed worldling, a Puthujjana, feels a pleasant feeling, feels a painful feeling, and feels a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Because an instructed noble disciple, an Ariya, feels a pleasant feeling, feels a painful feeling, and feels a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. So because what is the distinction then? What is the disparity? What is the difference between the Ariya and a Puthujjana, between a noble disciple and a worldling? Because both feel the three types of feeling. But what is the difference between those different individuals? So then the monk said, Dhamma Teachings are rooted in the Buddha, so please explain. So then the Buddha continues, because an uninstructed ordinary person, being touched by painful feeling, he sorrows, he's troubled, he laments, beats his breast, cries, becomes bewildered. He feels two feelings, bodily and mental. Suppose because a man was shot by an arrow, he would be shot in the wound by a second arrow. In this way, because the man feels the feeling of two arrows. In just this way, an uninstructed worldly ordinary person, being touched by painful feelings, sorrows, he's troubled, laments, beats his breast, cries, becomes confused. He feels two feelings, bodily and mental. So here, the point that's quite important is the distinguishing between bodily and mental feeling. There's a common assumption that a bodily feeling is basically what people regard as bodily sensations and so on, like things you perceive in your body that are uncomfortable and so on. But that's completely not the case. As the Buddha said himself, every feeling is mental, cetasika. Every feeling is basically felt on the level of the mind. So what is then? How then should we understand the bodily feeling? Well, it says quite clearly, bodily feeling is any feeling that you experience mentally on account of things that you can perceive with your body or within your body. So basically anything on account of your sixth sense base. So literally any feeling that you have on account of a sight is a feeling arisen on the bodily level. Now, if you start grieving further on account of that sight and lamenting and falling into despair, that's now the second feeling that's further mental. So bodily and mental are both mental in the sense of both are felt with the mind, but difference is where they came from, so to speak. So any bodily feeling is any discomfort you perceive by the body, or any comfort that you perceive by the body, internally or externally, or both. It's not just for the internal things you perceive in the body, nor is it just for the external things that you perceive with the body. It's both. So if you're experiencing feelings on account of any of the sense objects, whether it's sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, anything you've seen, heard, and so on, if there is a feeling arisen on that account, that is a bodily feeling. Now, both Puthujjana and an Ariya would be experiencing that type of bodily feeling. And for that matter, in a way, but we'll see that later, Arahant also experience bodily feeling, but you wouldn't call it a feeling if you choose the word feeling to be applicable to the feeling that you know as Puthujjana. So the complete absence of Puthujjana's feeling, then you can understand what Arahant's feeling is. But as I said, that's maybe a different topic. So now the difference between an Ariya and between a Puthujjana, the worldly, ordinary, uninstructed person, is they both experience these feelings on account of their senses, internally, externally, and externally. But the difference is Puthujjana mentally has no escape from that feeling, which is why he will always have pretty much a second feeling on account of it, simultaneously present there. So on account of the the discomfort, the pain touching you through the senses, something you've seen, heard, tasted that you don't like, that frightens you and so on account of that discomfort, you will be suffering mentally simultaneously with it. So that's what it means. You're hit by one arrow and immediately, basically, the second arrow would shoot you in the wound. So, furthermore, an uninstructed worldly person being touched by painful feeling, he will feel repulsion. Repelled by this painful feeling, the underlying tendency to repulsion lies behind this. Being touched by painful feeling, he delights in the pleasure of sense desires. For what reason? Because the uninstructed worldling does not understand any other escape from painful feeling other than the pleasure of sense desires. So it just continues. So having experienced something that pressures you through your senses, you're experiencing discomfort. Not knowing the escape from that discomfort, you start experiencing mental anguish on account of it. Not knowing the escape from that mental anguish, the only thing you know is turn back to the same senses that caused you that mental anguish and just look for things that are pleasant in them and try to replace the displeasing things with pleasing things. And that's definition of sensuality and sensual craving. So this passage furthermore just basically sheds more light on how that bodily feeling should be understood. As I said, it's not random sensations or things you perceive on account of a sense of touch of your body. It's basically feelings you're experiencing on account of things that you perceive through your senses. Which is why exactly by not knowing escape from that, you would turn back to the same sense objects, just trying to replace them with those that are agreeable. So because the uninstructed ordinary person does not understand escape from painful feeling other than the pleasure of sense desires. That's why for him, delighting in the pleasure of sense desires, then the underlying tendency of passion towards pleasant feeling lies behind this. He doesn't understand as it is the origin, the gratification, the danger and the escape of those feelings. For him, not understanding as it is the origin, the gratification, the danger and the escape of those feelings, the underlying tendency of ignorance regarding neither painful nor pleasant feeling lies behind this. So if he feels a pleasant feeling, he feels connected to it, he's bound by it. If he feels a painful feeling, he's bound by it. If he feels neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he feels bound by it. So this bhikkhu is called an uninstructed only person who is connected, who is bound by birth, aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, despair, unhappiness, trouble, who is bound with suffering, I say. So just to recap, a Puthujjana feels the feelings that have arisen on account of his body, on account of things. And when you say body, you mean six sense base. That's what body is. You know the body because of the six senses, and you know the six senses because there is a unit called body that they basically consist of. So Puthujjana experiences a feeling on account of anything that can come through his senses. Whether it's a sense of touch, like uncomfortable bodily sensations, like, rough stone you have to sleep on, heat, cold, or even if it's something like a displeasing sight, frightening sound, a disagreeable, disgusting taste, horrible smell, any of these things that you will be perceiving there on the level of perception, they do cause you simultaneously to be pressured by an unpleasant feeling in regard to it. It's disagreeable. You feel it unpleasantly. And there is absolutely no problem with this if then the Puthujjana would know the escape of it. If he would understand the impermanence of the sense bases, the impossibility, the inherent lack of ownership of your own body, like fully understood that, not just occasionally thought about it, it would be impossible for him, well, he wouldn't be a Puthujjana, but it would be impossible for him to be pressured by any feeling that would arise in regard to that which has been understood as completely impermanent. Impossible to own, cannot pertain to you, cannot bother you in that sense. But by not understanding that, he gets hit by the second arrow of pain. So not just that you're pressured, but then you recognize that you have absolutely no means of escape from that pressure of that painful feeling, because literally you can't shut down you can pull your eyes out and still you can suffer on account of absence of vision now, whatever. The visual domain remains, the senses remain intact even if you start trying to destroy them. And that's why when those people back in the day said to the Buddha, oh, they practice by not seeing things and not hearing things with their ears and not seeing things with their eyes. And he says, you're no different than a blind and a deaf man. So there's no wisdom in that. You're just avoiding because you don't know where the problem is. So not knowing where the problem is, you don't know the escape from the problem, you then suffer twice as much, so to speak. So there is suffering on account of simple disagreeability of certain sense experience. So bodily suffering, you can call it. But then because not knowing the escape, there is the mental suffering involved. So literally, think of it like this. So there's something bothering you, physically, say. But there is also a possibility, a certain prospect within that thing that it might be life-threatening. So in itself, it's not impossible to endure that certain discomfort. You could endure it, but there is a thought attached to it that this actually might be causing the ending of your life, might kill you. So then the significance, even of that which you could bear, is now far worse because you don't know the escape from it. You don't know how to prevent it, and your life is at stake. And that's the real suffering here. It's not that discomfort on account of bodily feeling that you're experiencing. It's that mental anguish on account of not knowing the escape and recognizing that, well, if it doesn't crush you now, it will at some point in the future. That's why Buddha said, by being bound to those feelings that have arisen on account of sense organs of your body, you are bound by sickness, aging, death, despair. You're bound by samsara. You're bound by the whole thing. So that's the real problem there. Not knowing the escape is where the dukkha is. And which is why exactly for Sotapanna, he becomes a Sotapanna, he becomes an Ariya by knowing the escape from dukkha. The Four Noble Truths is a definition of escape from the dukkha that has been understood. So then the same Puthujjana, who now has this mental anguish, and by the way, even the agreeable pleasure that touches your body, it still pressures you. It's still felt on the level of that bodily feeling. It's felt unpleasantly. We covered that in other talks. You can, I think, if you look at the, what is it? The Overcoming Sensuality playlist. It's all there. But the point is that even the seemingly agreeable prospect of sensual gratification is first felt unpleasantly. And this sutta repeats that. So anything felt through the body pressures you, bothers you, so to speak. Like the simile of the flayed cow. Whichever way you lean or experience is going to be bothersome. Not knowing the escape, you get the mental anguish on account of it. Not knowing the escape from that, you then turn back the only direction you know, which is the direction of the senses that cause the whole thing. So that's the irony of the whole sensual craving. Because sensuality is painful, you seek it in order to overcome that pain. In order to basically replace that pain, you seek that which causes the pain. That's why the Buddha compared sensual attachment to madness. Said all Puthujjanas technically are mad because it's a level of madness. Or gave the other similes like burning yourself with the burning coal. So the embers, burning your skin because it offers you some sort of numbing gratification of your sort of itchy disease and so on. So not knowing the escape from that discomfort, you turn back to the very thing that caused you that discomfort and then just try to seek less uncomfortable things, which is what sensuality is. Sensuality is not actually pleasant. Sensuality is simply less painful from other more painful things. And less pain from the perspective of pain, especially if you want to get rid of the pain, is going to be seen as pleasant, as extremely wanted and welcomed. So that's what Buddha means by Puthujjana not understanding is any escape from painful feeling, any other escape, than the pleasure of the sense desires, he goes for the pleasure of sense desires. That's why he cultivates that delight. So next time anything uncomfortable touches him, he simultaneously, his mind is in a state of a context, basically, that values escape from that discomfort through sensuality. So simply by experiencing discomfort, he already delights in comfort. Even if he's not necessarily seeking it, the mind will hold the value of comfort, so he'll be delighting in it. And that's what the Buddha refers to, these underlying tendencies. So you need to stop delighting in comfort and stop delighting in trying to get rid of the pain. So then he goes on, the sutta carries on, and about the Ariya Savaka, the instructed noble disciple. When he's touched by painful feeling, he does not sorrow. He's not troubled, he doesn't lament. So now why wouldn't he not sorrow? What's the difference? Well, the difference is he understood the implicit, the thoroughly understood the implicit impermanence of that on account of which feelings have arisen. And that's important to say. You can't, he understood feelings are impermanent. Yeah, he understood that too, by proxy, but you need to understand, as the Buddha would say, that because of which feelings are, the origin of feeling. So you need to understand that already is impermanent, let alone then the feeling that has arisen on account of it. So it's not just a question of repeating to yourself that whatever you're currently feeling, this is impermanent, it's not mine, I can't own it, there is no sense of control. That's just management on account of you already being bothered by the feeling. You want to see through that presently enduring feeling, see what it depends on. So you realize, whatever, take a pleasant or unpleasant feeling, say in this case, unpleasant feeling on account of, so you're touched by something painful. So mentally, you're touched by pain on account of, seeing somebody you really dislike, somebody that hurt you in the past, or something like that, somebody you had ill will towards. So just the mere sight of that person on the street and you're experiencing mental pain. So you don't want to now just be trying to get rid of that pain or explain to yourself that pain is impermanent. You want to see that your eyes are impermanent. Like, would you be able to experience that feeling if there were no sight whatsoever? Impossible. It was on account of sight, and it requires your memory of the same sight. It's impossible. It's still within the sight domain. But now, are you in a position to choose what sights will arise for you? What sights will not arise for you? What sounds will arise? Sometimes you can exercise some sense of control, but overall, which is more? Times you've seen things you couldn't see, you didn't want to see, or times you've seen things you want to see. It's far more things you don't want to see, things you didn't plan of seeing. Maybe you decided you want to see them later, but the point is, you have no say in your eyes seeing or not seeing. It's not up to you. Not dwelling sufficiently enough of that recognition, that's how you basically start appropriating your eyes and your sights. Which is why then you get pressured on account of feelings that arise on account of sights. But if you don't forget that your own very eyes cannot be yours, even if you want them to. Because if they could be yours, they wouldn't age, they wouldn't be liable to sickness, accidents, and so on. They would never stop working. But they're clearly not yours. So they just keep providing you with this content of sights, and same goes for any other organ, and you just keep taking it up all for granted as if you created it, as is there because of you. So that's the impermanence that needs to be, that's the level of anicca, sankhara anicca, not dhamma anicca, because when you are concerned about your feeling, thinking about your present feeling, at that moment, that is the dhamma of your experience. So you want to see the sankhara of that dhamma, as other suttas say, sabbe sankhara anicca, sabbe sankhara dukkha, sabbe dhamma anatta. So this feeling, it's going to be seen as not self when you see that upon which that feeling depends is impermanent and uncomfortable, not pleasant, not worth owning. So that's what an instructed noble disciple has understood. He has understood, in this particular example, the extent of the body and any feeling that can arise on account of the body. And when I say the extent, I mean the extent, the nature of it, the characteristics. It cannot be owned. So it becomes inconceivable for him to grieve on account of that which cannot, it's impossible to even imagine the ownership of it. The only reason people still keep imagining the ownership of their senses is because they never make sufficient amount of effort to think it through correctly. that it cannot be owned. And then any effort that's made, it's usually made then on the level of the feeling. Our feeling is not mine, feelings are nature, when feeling bothers you. But that's not the right level. You need to see through that feeling that which, because of which the feeling is. So understanding that sankharas are impermanent. That's what that statement means. So because an Ariya, being touched by painful feeling, he doesn't sorrow, is not troubled, does not lament, does not beat his breast, does not cry, and does not become confused. He feels only one feeling, on account of the body, not mental. Suppose because a man was shot by an arrow, he would not be shot in the wound by a second arrow. In this way, because the man feels the feeling of one arrow. In just this way, because an uninstructed noble disciple, being touched by painful feeling, does not sorrow, he is not troubled, does not lament, does not beat his breast, does not cry, and does not become confused. He feels one feeling on account of body, not on account of his mind. And for him, being touched by painful feeling, there is no repulsion. So there is no aversion towards that painful feeling, which is any feeling at that level. Any feeling is pressuring you, thus any feeling is painful feeling. But he is not averse to pain, because he doesn't need to be. Why would he want to be rid of the pain when he knows that it's not his concern? He hasn't created it. It has arisen on its own, and he has understood that whatever arises on its own, that's why it has to pass. It has to come to an end. So there is nothing for him. He cannot think, oh, this will last forever and bother me forever, which is usually that irrational thought of, oh, this pain will be forever. Even people know it won't be there forever. They can't help but keep thinking, it will be forever, so I must get rid of it. Just this once, I must get rid of it, and then later on I'll contemplate that it won't be forever. Well, an Ariya cannot think that anymore, because he's fully understood that whatever has the nature of arising, that's why it has nature to cease. So when he's touched by painful feeling, it's impossible for him to be averse towards it. So not being averse towards this painful feeling, the underlying tendency towards aversion does not lie behind this. So being touched by painful feeling, he doesn't delight then in pleasure of sense desires. So if he is not then touched by that second pain, why would he then need to try to get rid of it when it's not there? So when it's not there means the basis for wanting sense pleasures is not there. For what reason? The instructed noble disciple understands the escape from painful feeling other than the pleasure of sense desires. So for him, not delighting in the pleasure of sense desires, the underlying tendency of passion towards pleasant feeling does not lie behind this. He understands as it is the origin, the gratification, the danger, and the escape of those feelings. We covered in other talks what the origin is, what the gratification, what the danger, and what the escape is. You might have to search the channel. For him, the understanding as it is, the origin, the gratification, the danger, and the escape from this feeling, the underlying tendency towards ignorance regarding neither painful nor pleasant feeling does not lie behind this. If he feels pleasant feeling, he feels it unconnected to it. So he's not bound by it. If he feels a painful feeling, he is not bound by it. If he feels neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he is not bound by it. This bhikkhu is called an instructed noble disciple who is unconnected, unbound by birth, aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, unhappiness, trouble. He is unbound by suffering. This bhikkhu is the distinction, this is the disparity, this is the difference between an uninstructed noble disciple and uninstructed ordinary person. One with understanding does not feel a feeling. Pleasant, painful, one who has learned much. Between the wise, clever one and the ordinary person, this is the big difference. For one who has recognized the Dhamma, one who has learned much, seeing this world and the next, things that are wished for do not disturb the mind. And things basically that are not wished for do not repel the mind. So for him, welcoming or opposing are extinguished, brought to an end, do not exist. Having understood the stainless, sorrowless place, the one who has gone beyond being understands these things correctly.